Happy Canada Day, everyone. 158 years old and still saying sorry to a moose. God's country. Cold enough to keep the beer and the grudges. We couldn't afford a flag growing up. We were too poor. So we just saluted one of Dad's beer labels. It was close enough. Red, white, and a leaf. And by noon, my old man was face down in all three. To the true north. Strong, free, and open till 2. If you paid to get in, you're already my kind of stupid. Welcome home. My father, 42 years on God's earth and not one of them sitting down. The doctor said his heart gave out. I said, Doc, that man never had a heart. He had a fist with opinions. Name's Mike. You might have clocked it. I do all my crying out the one side now. Saves on Kleenex. Most everyone I meet wants the story of what happened to the eye, but nobody wants to buy me a drink first. 40 years of that, it's like being married. Mine is the good bits, plus the actual marriage. Grew up poor. Sure did. When we talked about money, it was specifically the complete and total absence of it. My parents had 9 kids in a 2-bedroom apartment. 2 bedrooms. You didn't get a bed, you got a shift. I slept Tuesdays and every second Sunday. 9 kids. My parents, they had exactly one hobby, and it wasn't fucking Scrabble. 3 brothers to a mattress and a treaty older than the country. You crossed the middle line, you lost a finger. I've got a hand looks like a game of rock, paper, scissors that went to court. We were so poor the mice moved out, left a note. Gone next door. They've got crumbs. All the best. The mice. My clothes were handed down through 5 other brothers before they got to me. By the time I got a shirt, it had more holes than a priest's alibi and less fabric than a promise. Mom ran dinner like a casino. House always won, and somebody always left hungry. I watched that woman deal 9 plates off a pan the size of a hubcap and still hold one back for Father Doyle. Never trust a hungry priest, kids. That's just good sense. We didn't say grace. We said go. First one praying was the last one eating. I found God and lost a sausage in the same second. Made me the man I am. It was shit. Miserable, character-building shit. We were so poor, I thought gravy was a beverage till I was 19. First time a girl offered me a starter, I thought I was getting propositioned. Said yes anyway. Turned out to be soup. Best night of my life to that point, if I'm honest. At Christmas, there was always only one gift, and it was for my parents. But one year, there was one bike between the 9 of us. That's actually where I learned to ride, waiting my turn, which never came. So I took it. Fastball I ever took, from my own family. 1 bathroom, 11 people. A queue with its own foreign policy. You learn to hold. To this day, I've got a bladder like a Swiss bank. Takes everything, gives nothing back, and technically, it's a war crime. People say, Mike, that's not poor, that's character building. And they're right. Because poor is when your dad tucks you in on your night, a Tuesday, and says, Michael, we're not poor, we're pre-rich. Then he'd drink your mother's gin and cry at the wallpaper. Pre-rich. Took me 40 years to translate that. You know what it means? It means keep drinking till it stops mattering. Cheers, Dad, you absolute weapon. And that's the miserable stuff, but don't worry, it gets worse. Let's talk about the man himself, my father. Needed 2 for this one. My father. Let me paint you a picture. A man built like a fire hydrant and about as likely to go off in the middle of the street. He worked. 2 jobs, sometimes 3. He came home every night with hands like catcher's mitts and a temper like a car alarm. Went off if you looked at it, and nobody alive knew how to shut it down. And let's get this straight. He wasn't an alcoholic. Alcoholics go to meetings. My father didn't go to meetings. He held court. Flooring. He had a stool at the pub with his name on it. Not a plaque, he carved it into the stool himself, with an ashtray he'd nicked from a different pub. Now see, that's a man with standards. Crown say he drank too much. Define too much. The man drank exactly enough to come home to 9 kids and not turn straight back around. If you think on those numbers, you'd have poured him one yourself. And his opinions. God, the opinions. He had strong views on countries he'd never seen and food he'd never eaten. All music after about 1958 he took as a personal insult. He heard rock and roll come out of my room one time and looked at me like I'd walked a live goat into the dining room. He used to argue with the television, and win. I once watched him tell the evening news to go fuck itself and switch it off before it could answer back. Undefeated. 42 years on this earth, never lost a debate. Because he owned the off switch. And when it came to discipline, we didn't have timeouts in our house. Oh no, not us. We had time and a half. He had a belt he called the Negotiator. Never lost a round of talks in its life. I learned my geometry off that man. Angles of approach, mostly. To this day, I can plot the trajectory of a flying beer bottle to 3 decimal places. Nobody puts it on a resume, but it's a skill. And here's the thing they never tell you. I turned out fine. Look at me. 1 eye, 3 ex-wives, and a warrant in 2 provinces, telling jokes to strangers at the bottom of society. I'm fine. I'm thriving. But not the old man. He worked himself into the ground. 42 years old. Too young. Way, way too young. I'm older now than my old man ever got. Let that one sit on you a minute. You spend your whole childhood looking up at this giant, this force of nature, and then one ordinary morning you catch yourself in the mirror and you've gone and passed him. Overtaken your own father in the rear view. Nobody warns you about that one. I'd give a lot for one more argument with him. Just one. I'd let him win. No, I wouldn't, but I'd think about it. And in my family, that's love. Thinking about letting them win. Hard man, my dad. Toughest man I ever knew. With 9 kids, he knew every single one of our names, little shit. Just kidding, he did eventually, and in the exact order of who was in the most trouble. Faced he'd gotten, he'd stop in the door of that packed little room, look down at the whole pile of us, and say the same thing. Get some sleep, my little rugrats, for tomorrow we go again. So here's to him, the fist with opinions. Flooring 200, drank too much, loved us the only clumsy way he had, sideways. Cheers, Dad. And how about the woman who married that? My mother. Prejudice. Genuinely a saint. A saint with a bottle of gin and a little brown pill she called her helper. My mother. A saint. And I don't mean that soft. I mean canonized. You put a woman in a 2-bedroom flat with 9 children and a husband who argues with the news, and she comes out the far side still smiling. That's not patience. That's a miracle. And I don't know what the Vatican's waiting for. Here was her secret, and I'll say it plain, because I don't care who knows it. Never have. She sipped her gin like a sacrament, and took her little helpers like communion. A little brown pill, a splash of dry gin, and by 3 in the afternoon, that woman had reached a level of peace the monks are still up a mountain looking for. The doctors handed those pills out like sweets back then. Nervous are we, missus? Nervous. She had 9 kids and a man downstairs losing a debate to a television. Nervous is the correct medical response to that. If anything, she was underprescribed. She was running a 9-kid shit show on rations and a smile, and she never dropped a plate. And people say to me, Mike, isn't that a bit sad? No. Sad is a woman with 9 kids and no gin. My mother had a system. Don't you dare call the system sad. She never once raised her voice at us. Couldn't half the time. By 4 o'clock, she was communicating entirely in slow blinks and the odd, graceful little wave, like the queen going by on a horse. My father was the storm. My mother was the forecast that had long since made its peace with the storm. Chemically, beautifully. He'd be putting a fist through the kitchen door, and she'd drift past with her glass and murmur, "Language, dear," to the door. She loved us. You could see it. Eventually. Round about 4:30, when the pill and the gin finally shook hands, her whole face would go soft, and she'd look out at the 9 of us, and she'd say, "Now, which ones are mine again?" And she meant it warm. That's the thing. She meant it with her whole heart. She just needed a rough head count. She kept her gin in a lemonade bottle so Father Doyle wouldn't see. He knew. Course he knew. He was working his way through the church wine. The two of them would nod at each other across a room like a pair of spies who'd agreed, silently, that neither one was ever going to file the report. And you want to know where I got all this? You think I fell into a life of professional drinking by accident? No. I was trained. Homeschooled. My mother taught me you can get through absolutely anything one measured sip at a time. And my father taught me exactly what it was you were getting through. Between the two of them, I never stood a chance. And I have never once wanted one. That's the real inheritance, by the way. Not a shred of shame. That's the one thing the pair of them handed me clean. You cannot embarrass a man who was raised 11 to a bathroom. There is nothing left to hide. I'll tell you anything. I don't care what you know about me. You knowing it doesn't cost me a thing. So here's to her, my mother. The calm in the middle of the noise. Gin in the lemonade bottle, a little helper under the tongue, and enough love left at the end of a very long day to squint out at 9 kids and pick every single one of us out. Cheers, Mum. You held the whole thing together with 2 hands and a prescription, and I never once saw you flinch. Right. That was the inside of the apartment. Let me take you outside now. The neighborhood. Because if you think it was rough in the house, wait till you see what was waiting on the step. The neighborhood. We grew up in a postal code the mapmaker drew with a shaky hand. The kind of street where the welcome sign had been nicked, sold, bought back, and nicked again. It was a bad neighborhood, and I say that with love, because it was my bad neighborhood. Disregarded our street. They forgot it on purpose. They didn't falk and pave it, they just apologized for it once a year in writing. We never locked our door. Why would you? A lock costs more than everything behind it. The burglars in our area weren't thieves, they were volunteers. A fella broke into our apartment one night, had a good look round, and left us a $5 out of pity, and a note, "Sorry, times are tough all over." That is the most money anyone ever handed my family. Everyone on that street had a nickname and a probation officer, and half of them were sharing the same officer. You didn't call the police where I'm from. The police were a rumor. By the time they turned up, the situation had already resolved itself, usually into an ambulance. Colonel for the street. You and I was blessed. I was shit at both, so I learned to talk. That's where this mouth comes from. This mouth has walked me out of more rooms than my legs ever have. We had one pub, one Mary Brown's, one church, and one thug the entire street owed money to. That was the whole economy. And the pub was the town hall, the courthouse, and the dating app all in the one room. A room that smelled of rotten beer and bitter disappointments with a whiff of decisions you could already tell were going to end in a train wreck or a night in the Crowbar Hotel. But here's the part nobody tells you about a place like that. Nobody had anything, so everybody shared everything. You went hungry, a neighbor fed you. Your dad got busted, somebody else's mom walked you to school and never said a word about it. It was the poorest, the kindest, and the most dangerous square mile I have ever loved. All 3 at once. You don't get that in the nice areas. In the nice areas, they've got everything, and they'll still not lend you a cup of sugar. It was also, and I'll say it flat because I genuinely do not care who's writing this down, it was where I learned the family trade. And the family trade was not plumbing. Everything I know about the wrong side of the law, I picked up before I could grow this mustache, on a street where the only actual crime was getting caught. Hold that thought. We will get to my professional years. So here's to the old neighborhood, the volunteer burglars, the shared probation officer, the one pub that raised me better than most of the adults did. You were a dump. You were dangerous. You were home. And you made me exactly what I am, and I've never once tried to wash it off. Submerged. And right in the middle of all that noise, the poverty, the fists, the fine, upstanding gentlemen relieving us of nothing, I found the one thing that finally got me out. And it wasn't a bus. It was a 3-minute song coming out of a radio somebody had very obviously stolen. That's next. The music. Rock and roll. The first thing that ever got its hooks in me and had the decency to never let go. So, the music. I'm about 11, and a song comes crawling out of a radio that had very obviously been stolen. Everything electrical in our house had a previous owner, and it goes straight through me like a current. Rock and roll. That was the whole conversion. I didn't find God in the church with Father Doyle and the wine. I found him at 33 1/3, coming out of a cracked speaker, telling me there was a bigger, louder, filthier world somewhere past the end of our street. The first record I ever owned, I stole. Obviously. I was raised right. My father heard it the once. The man took all music after about 1958 as a personal insult. Heard it thump through my door and looked at me like I'd walked another live goat into the dining room. Called it noise. Of course it was noise. That was the point. It was my noise. It was louder than the whole apartment, and for 3 minutes at a stretch, it drowned out the shouting, the line for the bathroom, the whole shit pile of it. You give a poor kid something that loud, you've handed him a door. And I'll tell you what rock and roll actually is, since people ask. It's not a genre. It's the only food group. Everything else is a side dish. Give me 3 chords and a bad attitude, and I'll die a happy man, one eye and all. But a song only takes you so far standing still. And then I found the bike. First wheels I ever had. And picture this, because it matters. Me, a full head of hair back then, if you can believe it, no eye patch yet, no sense whatsoever, 40 mile an hour down a road the city had apologized for, and for the first time in my whole life, quiet. Up here. Nothing but wind. The bike didn't care that we were pre-rich. Didn't care whose hand-me-down shirt I had on. The bike just went. That's freedom. And nobody warns you it's that simple and that loud at once. And it had to be a Harley. I'm a 1%er, me. Proper. Patch on the back, wrong side of everything. You don't ride a life like mine on something polite. Some dick comes past me on a plastic import doing wheelies, I'll run the daft Fokker into the curb on principle. 2 wheels of respect, or you walk. And here's the great mathematical truth of my youth, and I say it with no shame. You know by now I've got none. The music got their attention. The bike got them on the back of it. You think those girls queued up for my conversation? Look at me. I had one good eye and a motorcycle. Where I'm from, that's not a personality flaw. That's a personality. There were a lot of girls. A lot. I won't count, partly out of respect, mostly because I can't. I was drinking by then too, in training since I was tall enough to reach the lemonade bottle. There were parties that kicked off on a Friday and were, far as the law's concerned, still ongoing by the Wednesday. Whole weekends I've only heard about secondhand, from people I'm told I was close with at the time. 3 of them I married. 3. And I've nothing bad to say about a single one of my ex-wives, which is more than the 3 of them ever said about me, And fair enough, they were right. I'd raise a glass, only I'm fairly sure two of them hold a restraining order that covers being thought about warmly, so we'll leave that. But you cannot throw a weekend that big, that loud, and that stupid for that many years without eventually attracting the wrong kind of company. The very wrong kind. The kind that turns up with a plan. And that, the trouble, the best worst friend a man ever had, and how a life like this lands you, more than the once, as a guest of the state. That's the next round. Get a drink in. You'll want to be sitting down for this one. Now, the best worst mate a man ever had. Chubbs. I've known Chubbs since we were boys, and in 40 years I have never once seen the man turn up anywhere and not immediately make it worse. Talks like he's got the whole East End in his mouth. He'd give you his last dollar and then lose yours. And he falls in love roughly 4 times a night. Any woman who so much as says hello to Chubbs, that's it. He's picking names for the children. Every party we ever went to, same routine. Some poor girl smiles at him to be polite, and I've got to lean over and go, "Easy, Chubbs." He never listens. Most mornings I catch him mumbling, "He's gonna get slappy." He's always about to get slappy. Near as I can tell, he was born to get slappy. And I love him. I do. He is the loyalest, thickest, most catastrophic human being I've ever ridden beside. And I wouldn't swap him for a saint. Now here's the wrinkle. Chubbs doesn't cause trouble freelance. Chubbs is employed. Chubbs is a made man. Well, a made-a-mess man. One of the Buggers' right-hand thugs. The Buggers. If you don't know the Buggers, count that a blessing. If you do, my condolences. Lovely family. Absolutely evil. Bit of both, all the time. And anything that has ever gone to shit in my life, you scratch it, you dig down, there's a Bugger underneath it. And Chubbs stood next to the hole holding the ladder, giggling, saying, "This is gonna work like butter, Mikey." Because Chubbs always had a plan. And write this down, young people. It's the only real wisdom I've got. The 4 most expensive words in the English language are, "The Bugger had a plan." Foolproof, he'd say. Cannot fail. And every single time, that plan went looking for the one fool it wasn't proof against. And every single time, it found me. Which brings us, naturally, to my professional years. As a guest of the state, more than once. I told you, the family trade was never plumbing. I've a warrant in 2 provinces and a photograph in 3, and I regret none of it. Because jail was the first time in my life I ever had my own bunk. 11 of us in that apartment, and I had to get myself arrested to finally land a room of my own. I damn near thanked the judge. Quietest year of my life. 3 meals. Nobody fighting for the bathroom. I sent my mother a postcard, telling her how I was moving up in the world. And it was on one of those nights, one of Chubbs's foolproof, Bugger-blessed, absolutely cannot fail, best idea he ever had nights, that I lost this eye. Or I didn't. Depends entirely who's asking, and how many I've had. And that is exactly where we finish. Get me one more. Last one's on the house. It's my house, and it isn't, and I don't care. Buy me around, and maybe I'll tell you about the eye. So, the eye. You've been very patient. You've bought the drinks, eventually, and you've sat through my father, my mother, the neighborhood, the bike, the girls, Chubbs and the Buggers. You've earned it. So here, at last, is the true story of how I lost the eye. Clang. It was a bar fight. 3 of them, all mouth. One of them says something about my mother, and nobody says a word about my mother but me. So I put 2 of them through a window before the 3rd caught me with a bottle. Went down swinging, never felt a thing. That's the version for the ladies. The truth? The truth is, it was a duel. Man of honor, me. Pistols at dawn, over a woman whose name I'll take to my grave, mostly because I never caught it. He fired early. Coward. You should see the other fella. Well, you can't. He moved provinces. No, I'll be straight with you now. I've had enough to be straight. It was a shark. I was saving a busload of nuns. The shark started it, I finished it, and it cost me the eye and most of my standing with the Coast Guard. Or, and this is the one Chubbs tells, it was a champagne cork. My sister's wedding, 1979. Cheap fizz and a hard lesson. Never trust a man who can't open a bottle, and never marry into a family that buys the sparkling by the pound. You want to know which one's real? Ask Chubbs. He was there for every single one of them, and he'll swear blind to whichever one I'm not telling. That's the beauty of a best friend. A witness who'll perjure himself out of pure love. Here's the only true thing I've said all night. It doesn't matter how I lost it. With this one eye, I have seen more, drunk more, loved more, and got clean away with more than most men manage with the full set. 2 eyes and half the nerve? No fucking thank you. So that's me. 1 eye, 3 ex-wives, warrants in 2 provinces, 1 Chubbs, and a family I'd toast into the ground and back. To my father, the fist with opinions. To my mother, the calm in the noise. To Chubbs, wherever he's currently getting slappy. And to you folks, for sitting in the dark with a half-cut old villain and laughing in the right places. I'm One Eye Mike. I was never meant to make it this far, and here I am. Get home safe. And don't do anything Chubbs would do. Good night, you animals. We go again tomorrow.